Hello, my name's Steve Johnson. I live in Manti, Utah. I've been making knives for about 35 years now. I started back in 1965. Anyway, it's a privilege to be able to work with Gene and Center Cross instructional videos and producing this video along with the other videos in the library. Gene has been making knives for a long time as have I, and most of the makers featured in this video library will have been, you'll note, have been around for an awful long time. I'm again really appreciate this opportunity, and I hope we can show you something about making a sub-hilt the way I do it. Let's get going on the first steps of building a sub-hilt then. Okay, well, the first step in making a knife is, of course, to pick your type of steel. This happens to be a piece of 3/16 or .211 ATS 34. It's an inch and a half wide. I buy these in anywhere from 1 foot to 6 foot lengths. And we'll start with a plastic pattern. This is just, some people use steel patterns, some people use any kind of material, cardboard, paper, whatever, to lay out their knife. Plastic works fine for me. I also use sometimes 16th inch thick micarta, and that lasts forever. Anyway, you want to locate your blade on your piece of steel and clamp it down with some form of clamp. As you can see, this piece of steel has a purple appearance to it. It has been painted with what is called Dychem steel blue, and it just makes the scribe line show up a lot clearer. Hold your pattern down tightly. Press hard enough to get through the steel blue. Maybe you need to move your clamp to get the rear end of it. Often, if you clamp your piece of steel in a vise, it helps also. Then I mark where the guards are going to be. In this case, you have the front guard or hilt and the sub-hilt. And also I mark where my grind line is going to stop in front of the guard. On this pattern, I want to move it just a little bit forward. Then after I take the pattern off, I'll just take the blade part of the pattern and quickly lay out where the guard, the sub-hilt, and the grind lines are going to end up on the knife. Later on, as will be seen, we'll mark the edge of the steel blank with a magic marker, keeping those guidelines where we want them to be. The next step is to saw out the blade on a low-speed bandsaw. If you don't have a bandsaw, you can grind it out. I guess you could cut it out with a hacksaw too, but I don't envy you that process. Okay, on sawing the blade out, I use a bandsaw blade that has a 10-14 tooth in it. That means for one section there are 10 teeth per inch, another section there are 14 teeth per inch, and that alternates throughout the length of the blade. Always wear gloves and any other safety equipment you have. For sure, eyeglasses that have hard lenses in, or a safety shield of some kind. Sometimes with your equipment it's so noisy you want to have hearing guards or hearing protection, but this bandsaw isn't that noisy. Sometimes we use a push stick, sometimes we don't. It depends on the material. blade as you cut it out could take anywhere from 2 or 3 minutes, depending on the thickness of the pipe of steel, to 10 or 15 minutes if you're looking at a 1/4 inch sub-hilt and something like big blade. As we approach completion of the cut, I switched to a push stick rather than my fingers. Another important thing to remember when using the bandsaw is you can't cut curves, small curves with the 1/2 inch wide blade or 3/8 inch wide blade. So I'll cut little straight sections. Until I can get the blade in there for a and also pushing against the abdomen, which gives it takes a fair amount of pressure. You can see I'm covering quite a bit of territory. The wheel has two blades laid out on it, and I leave those connected until the knife or knives are almost completely cut out. You can see we cut a little bit of a curve there. Generally, you're going to have problems if you try to cut too sharp of a curve. It'll knock the set off of the teeth of the saw blade. It will therefore be dull a lot quicker. Push against the side of the blade and start a very slight cut into the blade on a low angle. You can start with a sharper angle to get a little point that we reach the clip of the blade. It's quite an abrupt change of angle. So rather than try to cut that curve, cut that piece of steel off, and now I'm going to cut a straight along the clip. Okay, here's our finished product as far as the sawing is concerned. You can see we've tried to get as close as possible to the line without touching it. And again, we've scribed the lines for the sub-hilt and the front guard, or front hilt, some people call it. And the grind lines, these lines are where the edge will stop on the blade. Later on we'll be marking and drilling the holes for the tube and the handle bolts. Okay, the next step is grinding to outline. As you see, we have the scribe lines we need to grind down to. First of all, let's look at the vacuum system I have. This is a Torret vacuum system, which to me is very important. This won't pick up every particle of dirt, especially the heavy materials, but it picks up the fine dust particles that are so dangerous. Okay, the next step, like I said, is the profile grinding. We need to grind down to the outline of the blade and the handle. What I tell everyone is to just grind halfway through the line and you'll be pretty close to right. I like the variable speed motors, because you can get things set up at a low speed and speed things up as you go to the proper belt speed. I really like these Cubitron belts. They cost 2 or 3 times more than the standard aluminum oxide belts, but they last 3 or 4 or 5 times longer. So I'm sold on them. You want to be sure to have the grinding belt slightly overlap the rubber contact wheel, or you'll be peeling the rubber right off that wheel. I'll just lay the blade on the belt very lightly to take that burr off the edge of the belt, or edge of the blade. Another important thing, as in every phase of knife making, is to make sure you wear gloves, safety glasses, perhaps even hearing protectors and dust mask. Some knife makers will tell you they don't need lines to help guide them in their grinding and manufacturing of the knife, but to me it helps a great deal to have some lines to keep things straight and accurate. This is a little tool made, I guess I got it from the CKS, Custom Knife Maker Supply, years ago. All it is a piece of brass with a little carbide scribe inserted in the end, and as you can see, the point is not centered. Here you can loosen this set screw and turn that scribe inside the tool, and that will raise or lower the scribe line on the edge of the blade. This one I use for 1/8 inch stock, and I made this one up for 3/16 inch stock. You could just take a broken tap, which is pretty hard material, and put it in here and get the same results. This one doesn't have a set screw. If it's too high on the edge of your blade, you can just put it on the grinder and grind some down and lower it down. But anyway, it's a very quick and easy way to find the centers of your edges on your blade. Make sure your table's clean. Just lay that down and drag that along the edge of the blade. Same procedure along the knife edge. This way, assuming your piece of steel is straight, you have a double line that's approximately 100 thousandths thick, 80 to 100 thousandths thick, along the top and the bottom of the blade, centered exactly in the blade, and also a guide line on the end of the tang, which gives you a guide for tapering the tang too. That gives us a guideline to grind both the edge of the blade down here to the plunge cut area, and the thickness of the tang at the end of the taper. That can vary between 30 thousandths if you're taking it down to final tolerances for the edge, or this happens to be right close to 80 thousandths. I like to leave that thick enough so that if by chance the blade warps during heat treat, I can grind that slight warp out without having to try to bend the blade. The next step is to mark and drill the holes for the handle screw. As mentioned earlier, I use this Dychem steel blue to help with the layout. I'm just going to touch up where I'm going to put my holes here so you can see things better. That'll, as Gene says, it's wonderful stuff with the terrible smell. So you don't want to breathe a lot of that. It dries very quickly. Now you'll see here that we have the sub-hilt and the guard. As I make sub-hilt knives, I leave this hole and don't drill that until I have the guards in place. But I'll locate the center of the tang like so. So you can see those marks. And Bob Loveless taught me this trick. As you look at that, these lines, whether you can see it on camera or not, appear to be slightly below center, even though you watched me lay those out exactly in the middle of the knife. It's an optical illusion. So I'll raise that handle screw hole approximately 50 thousandths or more and put it above center. It's an interesting illusion. As I turn that over, you can see this is way below center. But as we put it right side up, it appears to be closer to the middle, although we all know that it isn't. You want to put the first screw hole back, oh maybe, this is just a matter of opinion. This is 600 thousandths, which is a little more than a ½ inch. We'll mark it about there. This in toward the back of the handle, somewhere in this area. We'll mark that right there. The thong tube we want far enough forward that if we round the end of the handle, we want to have enough material between the edge of the handle and the thong tube to still be strong. What we'll do next is center punch those marks or those locations so that we can get the holes exactly where we want them. Once again, we don't want to forget to drill this hole. That's really hard to do after heat treat. You need a carbide drill, and it costs a lot more, takes a lot more time, and it's a lot easier to do it before you heat treat it actually. As I mentioned, the next step is to locate these holes. You can see I've marked it here, slightly above center. I think I'm going to go more toward the guard here, or the sub-hilt. You can use an automatic center punch like this, and we'll demonstrate how that works. All you do is locate your spot, push down, and if you can see that slightly below the line, if I want to go back up a little bit, I just angle it. We can push it uphill a little. Same here with this one. And the same with this one. You know, you're always gauging by eye on your knives, no matter what phase you're working on. And the thing about a custom knife, it can be anything it wants to be and anything you want it to be. Now you can see there's a slight dent there. I just like to, if I don't use this initially, I like to hit it with the